Hello everyone. I trust you're safe, very safe indeed, in this day and era where numbers for COVID-19 are actually going higher. So we do hope that you stay safe. It is okay to observe the protocols that are there. It's okay to wear a mask. It is all okay, all right? So today I want us to bring us to speed to what we have for our lecture today, and this is which unit? This is which unit? It is BED3110, Social Work with Persons with Disability. My name is Wanjiru Ngunyi from Mount Kenya University. What have we covered so far? We've been able to cover quite a ground as far as this unit is concerned. It's a very, very interesting unit, and I'm sure for those of you we have interacted in this unit, you've been able to appreciate the definitions of key terms. Social work justice. What is it when we talk about social work justice? When we talk about rationale of social work with persons with disability, what are we talking about? When we are talking about factors and approaches to disability, what are we talking about? So these are things that we've been able to cover. I know you have the lecture notes in your e-learning portal. Kindly continue to interact with them. Other areas that we have covered, and we took quite a bit of time here, is when we were looking at human rights and people with disability. Human rights and people with disability. And we saw that human rights for people with disability is anchored in the Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disability. So there is a convention. And the convention's disability concept, we were able to see has several elements. And what are those elements? One, evolving versus fixed concept. Two, disability, not a medical problem, but as an interaction between impairment and the surrounding environment. Three, the convention also includes all disabilities. They could be cognitive, they could be physical, all of them, they are actually included there. There is no one disability that is actually excluded from the convention. And then we have the categorization, the categorizing barriers rather than human beings. We have, we have barriers that we can actually categorize this disability and say, no, this one is too severe, or it is too little, all right? So those are also part of the elements of the convention disability concept. Other areas that we were able to cover is still on human rights, the importance of international instruments and events. Now, international instruments are there at the very global level, where it is assumed that countries, different states, different nations can actually ratify them, all right, sign them, and then say we are bound to behave this way, all right. So the UN Declaration on Rights of Mentally Retarded Persons of 1971, it is there to help guide how people treat persons with mental retardation. Then we have number 2, another instrument, which is the Declaration on the Rights of the Disabled Persons. This was done in 1975. Number 3, we have the International Year for Disabled Persons, which was started in 1981, or the instrument was done in 1981. Number 4, we have the World Program of Action Concerning Disabled Persons, and that was steered by the UN in 1982. Then the United Nations Decade of Disabled Persons, 1983 and 1992. This one actually passes as an event. See, since we titled this Instruments and Events, this was an event. All right. We still continued to check on some of these things as far as our unit is concerned, focus on various disability areas. We looked at poverty and disability. We looked at education and disability. We looked at employment and disability, people with intellectual disability, families and disability, people with emotional impairments, a disability across the lifespan. We were able to look at all that. Now we get to our lecture number 4. What is the focus for this lecture? Number 1, perceptions of people with disability. And I've been able to outline them here, and we will get to the details. The 3 of them: perceptions that persons with disability are dangerous, perceptions that persons with disability are superhuman, perceptions that persons with disability are a burden. We shall get into the details for this 3-prong perception of persons with disability. So we go with the first one, perceptions regarding persons with disability. Okay, this is an introduction. Historically, persons with mental and intellectual disabilities have been mistreated and neglected. That is true, all right? You want to mistreat them, either because they can't run as fast as you can, either because they don't understand, because there is a mental challenge, all right? So they are mistreated, they are neglected. Number 2, today, stigma and myths around mental illness persists, and the result is often discrimination and exclusion. All right? So there is a stigma and myth. Then we discriminate, we exclude. Next, stereotypes of persons with mental or intellectual disabilities make them appear unintelligent, make them appear weird, unable to work, with no chance of recovery, unpredictable, and dangerous. And from this background, that's where we are coming from when we are looking at the perceptions regarding persons with disability. Perception number 1. Persons with disabilities are dangerous. Most persons with mental and intellectual disabilities are not violent. They aren't. Nor are they more likely to commit violent actions or crime than those without mental disabilities. So we want to correct that in our interpretation. Okay, B. Persons with psychological disabilities are as intelligent. It's just trying to say that persons with psychological disabilities are as intelligent as everyone else and are able to actually function. So what is the disability? Maybe that is good to zero in before we make conclusions and before we have our own perceptions. Then we need also to acknowledge that mental illness as being caused by environmental and social factors and not merely by genetic or organic ones. That is perception that persons with disability are dangerous. So we are saying no, they are not dangerous. They are actually intelligent. They can function. Yes, there are other things that may have caused that disability, but otherwise they are okay. Number 2, perception that persons with disabilities are superhuman. We see them as courageous, powerful, and somehow able to overcome a great difficulty namely a disability. When analyzed more closely, this potentially positive image also implies that the majority of persons with disabilities have difficulty and miserable lives. I want us to take focus on C. The thing to bear in mind is that a person with disability is a human being with strengths and weaknesses just like anyone else. This is a very negative, it appears positive, but it's very negative. Because we are saying this person who has been able to carry on and to live with a disability, they are superhuman. They are not humans, and that is wrong. this person with disability, even if they have that disability, it does not mean that they are superhuman. They are humans with strengths and weaknesses. All right. Then we get to the third perception. That perception is that persons with disability are a burden. In contrast to the myth of superhuman, persons with disabilities are often portrayed as a burden to society, to family, to friends. This is the flip side of the superhuman approach, and again, intrinsically related to the charity approach to disability. The focus of the parent struggle is generally not intended to promote a negative myth about persons with disability, but the immediate effect can be felt throughout life. What are we saying here? We are saying this person with disability is a burden. So what am I going to do? I will actually lock this son in the house because they are a burden. I will actually tie them on a chain so that they don't run away. I need to do my economic activities as a mother or as a parent. Okay? So what are they? They are a burden. Now, if you have 3 or 4, God forbid, in a family, so you've got to get 3 chains because they are a burden. That's what we are saying. No, this should not be our perception about people with disability. All right. We get to our lecture number 5. And the focus area for lecture number 5 is protection of persons with disability. How do we protect them? Protection in practice. Next, identifying persons with disability. How do we identify them? Because as we have seen, some of them are hidden. They are locked. Next, protection risks specific to persons with disability. Okay, let's give it a run. Maybe as a way of introducing this, protection of persons with disability. Protection is defined as all activities aimed at obtaining full respect for the rights of the individual in accordance with the letter and spirit of the relevant bodies of law, namely human rights, international human rights, and refugee law. So that is how we can actually define protection. Protection in practice. The protection concept is wide in perspective. Protection is not limited to survival and physical security. The protection concept covers the full range of human rights, the economic, social, health, and cultural rights, like right to education, access to health services, and right to work. Also, rights like civil and political rights, such as the right to freedom of movement, the right to political participation, and the right to a fair trial. So that is protection in practice. The protection of persons with disability is principally a responsibility of the state. We are asking who is responsible. So we keep talking, and I'm giving a lecture of how persons with disability need to be protected. But who is taking responsibility? Who is the responsible person? So the protection of persons with disability is principally a responsibility of the state and its agents. State and its agents. Number 2, in situations of armed conflict, the responsibility extends to all parties in conflict. You can remember, you can agree with me that when things are normal, okay, I mean they are normal for everyone, whether you are able-bodied or not. But in times of conflict, things are different. Okay, so that's why we are saying in number 2, in situations of armed conflict, the responsibility extends not only to the state, but covers all parties in the conflict. 3, when states are unable or unwilling to provide protection, the international community has the responsibility to ensure that basic rights are respected. So, class, it is good for you to be able to interact and see who takes responsibility in what situation. Protection in practice means the following. We have 8 of them here. What does it mean? 1, activities to prevent violation of rights from occurring or reoccurring. 2, activities to stop ongoing violations. 3, activities to provide remedies through compensation and rehabilitation. 4, activities to promote an environment conducive to respect for the rights of all human beings. 5, activities to develop and implement policies on protection. Who is responsible to ensure protection? That is kind of answered there. Next, protection is principally a responsibility of the states and its agents. We were able to look at all that. And in situations of armed conflict, we also able to see those 3 there, who is responsible. Okay, how do we identify persons with disability? These are the following points to consider. 1, PWD means persons with disability. So, persons with disability are generally less visible, which makes them more vulnerable to protection risks. You know, you protect what you see. You protect the person you have identified. All right? So we need to get to know who, like in a community, who are the persons who are with disability. When we do that kind of mapping, then when it comes to doing protection, we already know who they are. So, number 2, families or household might keep people with disability hidden for the reason of not to lose prestige in the society. So it's good for us to get to know that people will not go exposing, hey, see, I have a child who has a disability. See, my father is now not able because they used to see, now they cannot see, they are visually impaired. You know, such things, so they are not going to display them. They will hide them. Why? Because of societal fear of losing societal prestige, and maybe they also don't want to be stigmatized. Number 3, women and children and the elderly persons with disability are more vulnerable than others. So it's good for us to know that this category of groups, women, children, and the elderly, are more vulnerable than others. Next, people with mental and intellectual disabilities are also more vulnerable than others, because then the society has a way of trying to categorize disability. They are saying if you just have one finger chopped off, you are good enough. The person with mental disability is worse. So you see, these are social constructs that we need to get rid of. They are quite negative. Next, people with severe disability or multiple disabilities are more vulnerable than others. That's another thing that we need to consider if we are to offer protection as social workers to persons with disability. Next, people with disability who have mental and intellectual disability might have difficulties understanding and therefore have a problem expressing their problems. We continue. Something else to consider is that people with disabilities might have low self-esteem, which affects their ability to express themselves or to express their protection needs. 8, they might encounter discrimination within their own households, therefore asking to and discussing with their family members will not be enough. 9, there is stigma associated with disability, and that might influence the possibility to redress violation. 10, persons with disability have more difficulties to access remedial actions and need support to redress violations of their rights. I want us to get some examples of protection risks specific to persons with disabilities. We look at A, general protection issues, discrimination. Where do we find these discriminations? Number one, they are discriminated against, which poses serious consequences on their rights. Two, persons with disabilities might be a respected member of the household and might even be kept hidden from the society. Three, persons with disability name at community level. Women with disabilities and men with intellectual disabilities are discriminated in relation to marriage. All right? People will really just want to discriminate you. Next, persons with disability have no access to work or have unfair work conditions because of their disability. B, protection risks in emergency situation. So, what is this that we are supposed to know? There is a likelihood of invisible disability. When the specific disability is not clearly visible, it can impair protection. You cannot see. Someone is not physically having a physical disability. So they cannot go telling you, you know, I had a problem somewhere where it's not really visible. And that may not cause people to be able to give them the protection that they so very much deserve. So invisible disability. Difficulties in freeing. It is more difficult for persons with disability to live when the conflict erupts due to mobility inability. Next, harassment due to hearing or speech impairment or intellectual disability. At checkpoints, for example, persons with disability with hearing impairment or intellectual disability might not be able to answer the questions that the security forces always do ask. C, we have the protection risks in displaced and settlement situations. 1, persons with disability can encounter discrimination when they need to secure a shelter with host families. Persons with disability, special needs in information sharing and emergency assistance are in general not considered well enough. 3, persons with disability are usually not represented in camp management structures, which make it more difficult for their voice to be heard. Next, persons with disability could not access health services because of limitation of movement out of the camp. Now, this, I want you to see the C, it is protecting or protection risks in displaced and resettlement situations where you are put in camps and you happen to have a certain disability, whether visible or invisible. We want to conclude. And as we conclude this unit, we want to say this, that it is always good to know that behind someone, a human being with disability, behind that person, behind that disability is a human being who ought to be treated with human dignity. Do exactly that. I have some thoughts that I want to share with you as we actually conclude this unit. Disability can occur. Remember, this is a thought. Disability can occur at any stage of life. Any stage of life. What is the attitude or change that society should have regarding persons with disability? We have seen people in society, they had good sight, and within no time, gone. So they become visually impaired. So what are we supposed to change? Our attitudes. And let me tell you, when we change our attitudes, that changes our behavior. Just have this thought and then see how we are able to have positive attitudes towards persons with disability. Thank you so much. Come to the end of the lecture. God bless you and keep you. Stay safe. Wanjirongun is out of here.
These televised lectures supplement our robust online learning going on our MKU online platform. You can view more on our televised lectures via our online platform. We are in a digital era, and Mount Kenya University knows this. The following are the steps to follow so as to complete your online application. Download the application form from the website www.mku.ac.ke. Attach copies of your academic certificates and ID. Pay the application fees via M-Pesa pay bill number 270988. Your ID is the account number. 2,000 shillings is the charge for a postgraduate. You can also deposit in the bank accounts provided on the website. Then email all the above to apply@mku.ac.ke.